We've all seen it. That one ambitious wonder kid who walks into the office with a fresh MBA, zero experience, and a job title he only got because his uncle knows someone in the corporate office. Usually, these guys think they're untouchable. They think they can disrupt decades of hard work with buzzwords and ego. But there's a golden rule in the workplace. Never go to war with the veterans, especially the ones who've been keeping the lights on since before you could drive. In today's story, a 25-year-old manager decided to challenge a man who knew every secret in the building. He thought he was playing 4D chess. He didn't realize he was actually signing his own resignation letter. Sit back. This is a masterclass in how a quiet veteran used the one thing a transformational leader hates most: total, professional, documentation. Let me paint you a picture of Midwest Freight Solutions in Romeoville, Illinois. 2 floors of drop ceilings, fluorescent lights that flicker at a frequency just below seizure, but well above comfortable, and a parking lot that smells like diesel regardless of wind direction, season, or the mercy of God. The Keurig in the break room produces a liquid that is technically coffee the same way a gas station hot dog is technically food. It meets the minimum legal definition, and that's where the generosity ends. My name is Dave. I'm 38 years old. I've been a senior logistics coordinator at this company for 13 years, and I know where every skeleton is buried. Some of them I help dig the holes. I know which carrier rep will answer at 2 in the morning when a refrigerated truck breaks down outside of Effingham. I know which customs form gets you through Chicago faster than the recommended one. I know that the TMS system crashes if you sort by both date and region simultaneously, and I know this because I found out the hard way in 2019 during a moment that aged me 4 years and 40 minutes. I am, in the language of corporate America, an institutional knowledge resource. In the language of actual humans, I'm the guy who keeps the lights on while management cycles through like a revolving door at a Panera. Kyle Brennan arrived on a Tuesday in January. He was 25, MBA from a school I genuinely never heard of, which in Illinois takes some doing. He pulled into the parking lot in a white Kia Stinger, which is a car purchased by people who wanted a BMW but didn't want to have that conversation with their parents, and walked into the building wearing a suit that still had the dry cleaning crease across the shoulders. His briefcase had 0 scratches on it. His hair looked like his LinkedIn profile photo. His LinkedIn headline read, Kyle Brennan, Transformational Leader, MBA, Driving Operational Excellence. He had been hired as my new manager. Not to replace a manager. There hadn't been a direct manager over my team in 8 months, and we had thrived. Kyle was hired above me, a structural reinforcement of the department, per the regional office in Chicago, which is corporate for. Someone's nephew needed a line on his resume. At his first all-hands meeting, Kyle set up an iPad with a stylus for notes. I sat across the room and watched. Over the course of 45 minutes, he made exactly 1 note. I could see the screen from where I sat. It was an upward arrow and the word synergy in block letters. He underlined it twice. He had also, and I want you to picture this clearly, printed his 30, 60, 90-day plan and put it in a frame. An actual IKEA frame with white matting. He hung it in his office, which he had and I did not, next to a motivational poster that read, Culture Eats Strategy for Breakfast, attributed to Peter Drucker, who I am fairly confident Kyle had never read. The poster was replaced 2 days later by an identical one that read, Culture Eats Strategy for Breakfast, but Kyle expenses both and calls it a team lunch. No one claimed responsibility. It hung for 3 days before Kyle noticed. His first words to the full department, I'm here to optimize our synergies. I looked into my Keurig cup. My private spreadsheet, the one I don't even show my wife, told me in cold, hard sells that if I could just grind it out in this cubicle for 10 more years, my index funds would finally finish off the mortgage, my cold storage crypto wallet would justify my paranoia, and I'd be able to hit the eject button on this corporate circus forever. I opened my Moleskine, black, hardcover, the kind that doesn't sync to anything, and wrote the date at the top of a fresh page. Within his first week, Kyle renamed the department. We were no longer logistics operations. We were the fulfillment velocity team. Nobody updated their email signatures. Our business cards still said logistics operations for the next 6 months because the order to reprint them never came with a budget attached. He scheduled his first team Zoom for the following Monday. It lasted 2 hours and 19 minutes. The agenda was titled Q1 Alignment on Cross-Functional Objectives. The outcome, per the meeting notes Kyle sent afterward, was agreed to schedule a follow-up sync to finalize alignment. I opened my Moleskine. I wrote 2 hours 19 minutes. 0 decisions. Action item, meeting about meeting. I underlined it once. No arrows. Somewhere between week 2 and week 3, Kyle discovered Agile methodology. I want to be precise. He discovered the vocabulary of Agile methodology. He announced that our department would be running 2-week sprints with daily stand-ups, story points, and a Kanban board in Jira that he had configured himself in a logistics department, where the primary variables are trucks, weather, highway infrastructure, and the emotional state of independent carriers at 3 in the morning. I sat with this for a moment. I wrote in my Moleskine, sprint number 1, goal, move 40 tons of industrial equipment from Peoria to Indianapolis on time. Story points, not applicable. The truck does not know about Jira. Daily stand-ups were set for 8:45 in the morning. This was specifically and precisely the time I used every morning to review overnight incidents from our carrier network. Delays, breakdowns, weather holds, documentation errors that needed to be fixed before 9 or they cascaded. I had done this for 13 years. The time zone math alone had become muscle memory. I showed up to the first stand-up with my laptop open, 3 browser tabs running, and my phone against my ear on an active call with a dispatcher in Memphis whose driver had a blown tire on I-57 with 14 tons of medical equipment and a 4-hour delivery window. Kyle looked at me. I covered the phone with my hand. Hey, I said quietly, we've got a carrier down on I-57 with med equipment. I'm actively resolving it right now. Start without me. Kyle opened his mouth. I was already back on the call. I resolved the situation in 11 minutes, sourced a replacement carrier, rerouted the load, and updated the customer before the window closed. Kyle, in those same 11 minutes, had not yet settled on a format for the stand-up. I did not say this out loud. I wrote it in the Moleskine. The first genuinely consequential mistake happened at the end of week 4. Kyle had been reviewing carrier contracts, optimizing vendor spend, in his language, and found that our arrangement with Kowalczyk Freight out of Peoria cost 12% above market rate. He sent a termination notice and renegotiated to a cheaper carrier, effective immediately. He did this on a Thursday afternoon. He copied me as a courtesy. What Kyle did not know, because he had not asked, and because the relevant clause was in Appendix C of the 2019 contract renewal, which was 31 pages long, was that the 12% premium existed for a reason. Kowalczyk had a priority handling guarantee that kicked in during peak season. November through December, they provided same-day rerouting, 24/7 dispatch access, and 0 penalty holds during weather events. It was, essentially, insurance against the worst 6 weeks of the logistics calendar. The Kowalczyk family had been doing business with Midwest Freight for 8 years. Stan Kowalczyk Sr. had my personal cell number. We had eaten lunch together in Peoria 3 times. He knew my daughter's name. I knew all of this. I knew it when I read Kyle's email. I also knew that Kyle was now the decision maker for carrier relationships, and I was an individual contributor, and he had not asked for my input, and the new process, which Kyle himself had implemented, required a formal ticket to be submitted for any operational consultation request. I replied to Kyle's email. Got it. Thanks for the heads up. I saved the email to a folder I labeled Insurance Policy. I went home. I slept fine. By week 8, Kyle had discovered performance improvement plans. He put 2 people on PIPs. The first was Barbara, 54 years old, 9 years at Midwest, who knew every carrier rep in the Midwest by first name and in several cases by their dogs' names. The second was Ray, 41, former long-haul driver turned coordinator, who understood freight logistics on a molecular level in the way that only people who have actually lived it ever do. The stated reason for both PIPs, low engagement in sprint ceremonies and agile processes. Barbara was quiet in stand-ups because she had nothing to contribute about story points. Ray came to stand-ups with coffee and left with coffee, his face entirely neutral, like a man who had seen too much highway to be rattled by a Jira board. I went to see Cynthia in HR. I brought her a Dunkin' medium coffee, 2 sugars, because I had learned her order in 2017 during a very different personnel situation that we do not need to get into. Cynthia was 52, had survived 4 CEOs, 2 ownership changes, and one attempted hostile takeover of the parent company. She had a resting expression that could best be described as serene awareness. The look of someone who has already processed every possible bad outcome and made her peace with them. I didn't file a complaint. Filing a complaint puts you in the story as a party to a conflict. I didn't want to be a party. I wanted to be a concerned colleague performing due diligence on compliance matters. I just want to make sure I understand the PIP process correctly, I said. My understanding is that a PIP requires documented performance history, like 90 days of documented issues. Cynthia looked at her coffee. That's correct, she said. Kyle's been here 68 days. She wrote something on a notepad. I finished my coffee. We talked about her daughter's soccer tournament for 3 minutes. I left. Kyle called a one-on-one with me that same week. He wanted to discuss my alignment with the new team culture. I showed up with the Moleskine and a pen. I sat down. I opened to a clean page. I wrote the date and time at the top. Kyle started talking. He talked about alignment. He talked about expectations. He used the word accountability 3 times in the first 90 seconds. I wrote down every word, not summarized verbatim. 2:04 p.m. We need to be on the same page. 2:05 Accountability culture. 2:06 Synergy, first use. Are you? Kyle stopped. Are you writing all of this down? I looked up. Of course. You mentioned last week that we need a culture of documentation. I take that seriously. He had, in fact, said this at the all-hands meeting, in front of the entire department. I had written that down too. Kyle didn't say anything for a moment. There is no professional response to an employee aggressively complying with your own stated values. He finished the meeting 11 minutes early. Entry in the Moleskine, Day 71, one-on-one with K. Brennan, 2:03 to 2:31 p.m., ended early. Topics: alignment, expectations, accountability 4 times, synergy twice, going forward 3 times. No specific action items. No documented performance concerns stated on record. No written follow-up sent. Filed under insurance policy. Here is something nobody tells you about working in logistics for many years. You develop a forensic relationship with numbers. Freight costs, fuel surcharges, carrier invoices. You see enough of them and patterns start to jump out at you like faces in wallpaper. You can't unsee them once you see them. So when I was doing quarterly expense reconciliation in month 4, a task that was, in writing, part of my job description, and I pulled up the vendor invoices, I noticed something. 3 separate invoices from a company called Pinnacle Logistics Consulting LLC. Each one, $14,999. 6 weeks apart. All approved by Kyle Brennan. Our internal policy required dual approval, meaning 2 signatures, for any single expenditure over $15,000. I sat with these 3 invoices for a long time. I got up and refilled my Keurig. The machine made a sound like a small animal expressing disappointment. I went back to my desk. $14,999. 3 invoices. Same vendor. Same services described as strategic operational consulting. 45 days total. $44,997 combined. I opened the Moleskine. I wrote 1 word, intentional. Then I sent a routine email to the finance department. Hi team. Working through Q3 reconciliation and want to confirm the approval chain on 3 invoices from Pinnacle Logistics Consulting. Each is $14,999. Want to make sure I'm pulling the right supporting documentation for my records. Thanks, Dave. I was not accusing anyone of anything. I was doing my job. Specifically, I was doing the part of my job that required me to verify documentation. If the invoices were fine, finance would confirm that, and I'd move on. If they weren't fine, that was a finance problem, not a Dave problem. I sent the email and went to lunch. Meanwhile, Kyle had also been running his corporate card with some creativity. I became aware of this because the corporate card expenses fed into the same quarterly report I was already reviewing. There was a line item on a Thursday in October, business development, team lunch, $340. On that specific Thursday, the entire team had been at a warehouse audit in Joliet. I had been there. Barbara had been there. Ray had been there. We had all eaten vending machine sandwiches in a break room that smelled like hydraulic fluid. Kyle had not been at the warehouse audit. He had been in Chicago. I did not flag this directly. I added it to the expense reconciliation file, which I submitted to finance as part of my normal process. I included a note. Team was at Joliet site visit this date. Please confirm attendees for this lunch per expense policy. Just doing my job. Dotting I's. Being thorough. 13 years of institutional knowledge at your service. I want to address one more item from that same period. In month 3, Cal had reclassified 2 of our part-time drivers as independent contractors. The stated reason, operational flexibility. The actual paperwork, done retroactively, without proper documentation, without notifying the workers themselves, and without consulting the person in our department who had, for 13 years, been responsible for making sure our contractor classifications didn't get us audited by the IRS. That person was me. I sent a memo to finance. Not to HR, not to legal, to finance. Just a question, really. Want to confirm our contractor classification on these 2 workers to make sure we're aligned with IRS guidelines before year-end. Happy to pull together the documentation if needed. Finance forwarded it to legal. Legal opened a file. I went home and watched TV and did not think about any of this. November in freight logistics is what tax season is to accountants, what flu season is to nurses, what the holidays are to people who hate the holidays but work retail. Every carrier is booked. Every route is stressed. Every service agreement has teeth. This is the 6 weeks when the insurance you paid all year either pays out or it doesn't. We no longer had Kowalczyk freight. Cal had spent September and October trying to find a replacement for the Peoria corridor. He had submitted a ticket through the new request system, the one he'd built, and discovered that he had configured the approval workflow incorrectly, so his own tickets required his own approval to proceed, creating a bureaucratic loop that took IT 4 days to untangle. Marcus from IT came over, stared at the settings for 90 seconds, put his headphones back on, and sent Kyle a video explaining the fix. Kyle watched the video twice and still had to call Marcus. The replacement carrier Kyle had switched to for the 12% savings had a fleet of 12 trucks and served 6 states. They were fine for standard volume. They were not fine for November. 3 clients hit delays in the first 2 weeks of the month. The third client was Hartfield Manufacturing out of Decatur, $2.3 million annual contract. They made components for agricultural equipment, and November was when they shipped to distributors to prep for spring. Delays cost them real money. They sent an official breach notice. Kyle organized an emergency Zoom. He called it a strategic partner alignment call. I was listed as a technical resource. The Hartfield rep on the call was a woman named Patricia. She had been in manufacturing logistics since before Kyle had a learner's permit. She had the energy of someone who had been lied to by vendors for 30 years and had developed an extremely efficient detection system for it. Kyle opened with, "Thank you all for joining. We want to be transparent about the strategic transitional phase we've been navigating with our carrier network." Patricia said, "Who made the decision to change carriers on the Peoria corridor, and when was that decision made?" Kyle looked at me, not because I had raised my hand, but the way you look at the person in the room who might know the answer to a question you suddenly wish had never been asked. "Dave," he said, "do you want to speak to the operational context? I want to be very clear about what happened next." Kyle had invited me onto this call. Kyle had described me as a technical resource. Kyle had asked me a direct question. I answered it. I shared my screen. I pulled up the email from February, Kyle's email, with his name at the bottom, with the date visible, with me in the copy field. I read the relevant section aloud. I stated the date the change took effect. I noted that the previous carrier had held a seasonal guarantee that the replacement carrier did not. I said all of this calmly, the way you read numbers off a spreadsheet. Patricia wrote something down. Kyle looked at the camera with the expression of a man watching his own professional references disappear in real time. "Thank you, Dave," Patricia said. Her tone was the verbal equivalent of a period at the end of a very short sentence. Afterward, Kyle sent me a message. "Hey, I think we should talk about how we communicate with clients going forward. Can we hop on a quick call?" I replied, "Totally. Let's set it up as a formal one-on-one so we have documentation for my development plan." Kyle did not respond for 6 hours. Then he sent, "Okay." At the one-on-one, he suggested I had been not fully aligned with the team narrative on the Hartfield call. I asked him, with the Moleskine open, whether he was saying I had provided incorrect information to the client. He said no. I asked if he was saying I had provided correct information in an inappropriate format. He said, "Well, not exactly. I asked him to help me understand the specific behavior he wanted me to change so I could document it in my development plan. He ended the meeting 9 minutes early. Patricia from Hartfield, meanwhile, sent a formal service review request to the regional office. Not to Kyle's email, to the regional account management address. Todd Harrington, Vice President of Regional Operations, received it on a Tuesday morning while drinking airport coffee in Chicago between flights. Todd looked up Kyle's name. He found the LinkedIn profile. He read, Transformational Leader, MBA, Driving Operational Excellence. He closed the tab. He booked a flight. Todd Harrington was 51 years old, no tie, rented Ford Fusion, the kind of man who had seen 6 Kyles and could identify them from the parking lot by the car alone. He pulled in next to the white Kia Stinger, looked at it for 2 seconds, and walked into the building carrying a single legal pad. Kyle met him at the door with a printed presentation. 52 slides. Gradient backgrounds. The title slide read, Midwest Freight Solutions, Our Transformation Journey, a Q4 Operational Excellence Review. Todd looked at the stack of paper. He said, Do you have a 6-month metric summary in Excel? Kyle said, I can put that together. Todd said, by lunch. A pause settled over the lobby like weather. Kyle said, by lunch. The way you repeat a sentence when your brain is already calculating the impossibility of what you've just agreed to. Kyle had configured a project board for 30 people, but could not make a pivot table. I ran into Todd at the Keurig at 10:15 in the morning. This was not engineered. The Keurig is in the break room. Todd wanted coffee, I wanted coffee, and there is only one machine. We stood there waiting for our respective cups. The machine made its usual sounds of mild suffering. You've been here a while? Todd asked. 13 years. The Peoria carrier. Can that relationship be repaired? I can call them this afternoon. Todd picked up his coffee. Good. That was the whole conversation. I went back to my desk. I had said nothing about Kyle, nothing about the invoices, nothing about the PIPs or the expense reports or the Hartfield call. I had answered 2 questions, both factual, both within my direct knowledge. I want to be very clear about this. I did not go to Todd. Todd came to the coffee machine. I was already there. The meeting was called for 2 in the afternoon. Todd, Kyle, Cynthia from HR, and legal, represented by a man named Paul who joined by phone and spoke in the measured, unhurried cadence of someone for whom every word is a potential exhibit. I was there as operational support. Kyle came in with the 52-slide deck on his laptop, just in case. He never opened it. Paul went first. He summarized the findings on the worker reclassification. 2 employees moved from standard payroll to independent contractor status retroactively, without proper documentation, without completing the required IRS classification test, without contracts for the reclassified workers. Potential penalties: up to $1,000 per misclassified worker per year, plus back employment taxes. Timeline of decision: traceable to a single email from Kyle's account in month 2. This was an attempt to create operational flexibility in the staffing model, Kyle said. Paul said, after a pause, the IRS doesn't use the term operational flexibility in its classification guidelines. Cynthia placed a single sheet of paper on the table. It was a printout of slide 23 from Kyle's own presentation, the one he had circulated to the whole department 3 weeks ago. The slide was titled, Compliance and Controls, Industry Best Practices. She put it face up in front of Kyle. She did not say anything. She just looked at him. 5 seconds of silence. Then she picked up the paper and moved to her next point. Those 5 seconds cost more than anything else in the room. Finance had done their own review, triggered by my reconciliation questions. They had found not 3 Pinnacle LLC invoices, but 4. A 4th had come in 2 weeks prior. For invoices, $14,999 each. Total, $59,996. All for strategic operational consulting. No deliverables on file. No meeting notes. No output documentation of any kind. Todd put the invoice summary on the table. These are 4 invoices from the same vendor, Todd said, for the same described services, totaling nearly $60,000, all structured $1 below the dual approval threshold. These were separate, discrete consulting engagements, Kyle said, all from a vendor with no prior relationship with this company, on board 3 weeks after you started. Silence. I'll need the contact information for someone at Pinnacle Logistics Consulting who can speak to the scope of work, Paul said from the phone. Kyle wrote something on his notepad. He did not provide the contact information at that meeting. Todd set the Hartfield breach notice on the table. He explained that Hartfield was reevaluating the partnership. He asked me directly, "Is the Kowalczyk relationship recoverable?" "I can call Stan Kowalczyk this afternoon," I said. "He'll pick up." "Make the call." Kyle looked at me, then at Todd, then at the table. He made one final attempt. "I think what we're experiencing here is a significant learning opportunity," he said, "for the whole team. We can treat this as a foundation for building stronger processes going forward." Todd looked at him, just looked, not angry. The specific expression of a man who has heard this exact sentence from 6 different people and knows exactly how each of their stories ended. "Paul," Todd said, "can you walk Kyle through the next steps?" Paul began to speak, slowly, without emotion, the way a document reads itself aloud. I looked at my notepad. I had not written anything during the meeting. There was nothing I needed to record. Everything that happened in that room was already on the table, and none of it had come from me. Kyle left 14 days later, by mutual agreement. That's the phrase that goes in the official record. What it means in practice is a separation agreement with a non-disparagement clause attached to both sides, a reimbursement provision for a portion of the compliance costs, and a notation in the HR system that is invisible on a standard background check, but extremely visible to anyone in the industry who calls Cynthia for a reference verification. He was 25 years old. He had been here 7 months. His office sat empty for 2 days before someone moved a spare printer into it. I got an interim operations manager title and a 10% pay increase. Not a triumph, a correction. The kind of thing that happens when a company looks around and notices that the lights have been on this whole time because one specific person has been flipping the switches every single day for 13 years. I called Stan Kowalczyk the afternoon of the meeting, the same day I told Todd I would. Stan picked up on the second ring. "Dave," he said, "I heard there were some changes over there." "The young guy's gone," I said. A pause. "The one who sent the email without calling first? That's the one. All right, send me the contract. I'll sign it." We talked for 40 minutes. He asked about my daughter. I asked about his son, who had started driving routes for the family company. We agreed to have lunch in Peoria in February. We signed a contract by the end of the week. Barbara and Ray had their PIPs voided, procedurally invalid, per Cynthia, issued without the required documentation history. There was a quiet conversation about remediation. I don't know the specifics because it wasn't my business. Ray brought me a donut on a Friday, plain glazed. He set it on my desk and walked away without saying anything. I ate it. It was good. The white Kia Stinger was gone from the parking lot by Wednesday afternoon. Barbara parks there now. She drives a 10-year-old Honda Pilot with a Peoria Chiefs bumper sticker and a cracked passenger mirror she's been meaning to fix. The Optimization Wins channel in Slack was archived. Its last message, dated 3 months prior, was a post with a confetti animation from Kyle. The second to last message was also from Kyle. In 7 months, the channel had 11 total posts, 9 of which were from Kyle, and none of which documented an actual win. Nobody made a closing announcement. It just disappeared, the way things do when nobody was ever really watching them. The framed 30, 60, 90-day plan left with him. I walked past the empty wall where it had hung and kept walking. I sat down at my desk. New Excel file, blank. Moleskine opened beside it. I flipped back to the last entry, the one I had written in month 4, when I found the 3 invoices. I had written $14,999 times 3. Intentional. Below it, I wrote times 4. Yes. I turned to a clean page. I got up, walked to the Keurig, inserted a pot. The machine groaned the way it always does, like it resents being asked to do the one thing it was built for. The coffee came out the color of disappointment and tasted like a decision you can't take back. I drank it anyway. Went back to my desk. Started entering data. The fluorescent light above me flickered twice, then settled. Outside, the parking lot smelled like diesel. It always does. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is exactly why you never mistake institutional knowledge for old-school laziness. Kyle walked in thinking he was the smartest guy in the room because of a degree in a white Kia Stinger. He forgot that in the real world, the person who knows where the skeletons are buried is the one who actually holds the shovel. Dave didn't have to scream. He didn't have to sabotage. He just let Kyle's own ego do the heavy lifting. It's a perfect reminder that sometimes, The most effective weapon in an office war is just a simple, well-documented paper trail. But what do you think? Was Dave too harsh? Or did Kyle get exactly what he deserved for ignoring a decade of experience? Have you ever had a transformational leader try to optimize you out of a job? Let me know your stories in the comments below. I read every single one. If you enjoyed this masterclass in malicious compliance, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more stories of workplace justice. Thanks for watching, stay sharp, and I'll see you in the next one.